Mic. Camera. Action.
Mind if I sit down?
Sure.
I hear the locals, they call it El Radar. Convinced it has some dark military purpose.
I think we're pretty harmless.
Palmer Joss.
Ellie, our way. Hey.
Nice to meet you, Ellie. What are you studying up there?
Oh, the usual. Well, nebulae, quasars, pulsars, stuff like that. What are you writing?
The usual. Nouns, adverbs, adjective here and there.
I work on a project called SETI.
Search for extraterrestrial intelligence? Wow. And that is out there.
Wait, are you a student or something?
I'm a writer. I'm writing a book. Then doing research. Just about how technology affects third world cultures. I'm also looking for this guy, David Drumlin. He's the new head honcho of the National Science Foundation. I'm trying to get an interview with him. I take it you know him?
Mm-hmm. You could say that.
Huh. SETI, man. That's fringe. Crossed paths with this guy before. I mean, something like that must really chap his ass, huh? Compass. Good for you, Al.
You better keep this. Might save your life someday.
Will you have dinner with me tonight?
I don't make a very good research subject. I'm just not very quotable.
No quotes. No quotes. Scott's honor. Just good meal, good company.
I gotta go. But Trellman's coming in this Tuesday.
All right. Welcome back to the Filmography, the show dedicated to watching every credited film from an actor's complete back catalogue, from past debut through to present day in chronological order. Each episode, I'm joined by an esteemed guest to watch and discuss the next entry from their focused filmography and consider how it ranks amidst their career and whether we can trace any typecasting trends or topic traits or theatrical tics. Today's guest is Geek Champion and former SuperDummy Paul. Today's film is Robert Zemeckis' Contact from 1997. We watch, you listen, and hopefully watch along too. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Nice of you to say former SuperDummy. It's, former nickname. I'm still going to say that I am definitely still a SuperDummy, just for anyone listening out there. Prepare yourself. I haven't got much cleverer since last time you heard.
With all that information you've been accruing from all these different sources, it's just not possible. You just filled all that space, all that cerebrum with all this knowledge, yes. Which is why you're the perfect person for this movie.
It's just full of rubbish, though. It's so full of rubbish. But on the other hand, this film did tickle some of those corners. So who knows what will happen, and who knows what will come out. Yes, thank you very much.
It does feel like one that could have featured, I think, in your show. I think maybe if Robert Zemeckis would have been amazing, obviously, to get on. But in terms of some of the subjects you covered and the people you had coming on that were involved in kind of the industry, Contact feels like it's pushing boundaries. It's using effects in ways which have never been used before. We were discussing before recording, like your Sky Captain episode one, which sticks with me, has been one of the ones I particularly really enjoyed. So. Yeah, that's why I feel like this is in the realm of kind of a lot of the subjects you covered at times.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, it definitely was. So I don't remember seeing it at the time. I saw it a bit later, but even then, it was the things that it does. Even looking back now, to be honest, some of the things you do look at it and go, "Oh, that was a bit clever, wasn't it?" Yeah, it definitely was trying different things and, you know, making your brain work in different ways. And
yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, because a lot of people call it kind of like smart sci-fi, don't they, or like hard sci-fi, which I think it is. I think it's presenting smart concepts and it's asking you to engage with the discussions that are happening on screen around kind of faith and science and belief. And but I think it's actually quite a straightforward movie in terms of the plot mechanics and where it starts and where it ends. That's not a slight, but I mean, I think that the heavy lifting, the thinking is about conceptually. The actual kind of narrative, the plot is quite a nice straight line.
Oh yeah, it's one of these films. If you wanted to, you could quite easily write a plot synopsis that's about 3 lines long, and you would cover the main points. Which, when you see the runtime, you're going to think that can't be right.
Yeah.
But yeah, the main points of it are pretty simple. It's pretty normal sci-fi stuff, really.
Yeah.
You just get a face full of Carl Sagan and various other sort of script writers that smash you in the face constantly in between all those main points. Some of it for good, some of it for bad, but it is definitely, and I think that's possibly why it might rub people up the wrong way. It does take the kind of sci-fi that you know and then slaps you around the face a bit, confuses you, turns your brain inside out, and then throws you out on the other side. And if you're not prepared for that, then you are going to come away from it thinking, the hell did I just watch?
Yeah, it's a fascinating piece for 97. It feels ahead of its time. I mean, when I was watching it, I was, as your brain often does, and I'm not sure if you do the same thing, I'm thinking, it's almost like, where does this exist at this point? And I'm thinking like kind of what came before and what came after and what its influences were and what it's gone on to influence. Like, it's just a thing that my brain does for better or worse. But, you know, this would make for a really interesting double bill with like Independence Day, which only came out a few years before this. Now, obviously, it's not at all that movie, but to think that was out 3 years before and was bombast and pew pew, you know, welcome to Earth and all this kind of stuff, defeating aliens with, you know, a Microsoft virus and all this bollocks. But it's really good fun. That's kind of where we were. That was the world of kind of sci-fi movies, really. And then this comes along. It feels like it kind of broke the mold a little bit.
Well, 97 is what, the year of Men in Black, Fifth Element, Final Destination. Not to Chris there. Don't talk evil about Final Destination, Chris. It's very much the sort of, you either go the hard sci-fi or you go Men in Black, or you have a bit of fun with it, or Fifth Element. You know, those are the sort of things that people are prepared for. That's what was going through their mind when they're looking at sci-fi. And, you know, this starts off one way and then completely turns you around. It is very brave. I'll give them that. And when you consider, I mean, I don't know exactly how long it was in development for, but it took a long old time.
About a decade, I think, from a bit longer than that. I think from concept to becoming a novel. I think the novel was about mid-80s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So then finally being released. Yeah.
And because he started off writing the film.
Yeah.
Then it got stuck and nothing happened. So he thought, oh, well, I'll just make a novel out of it then. So then he wrote the novel, and then they sort of turned around and eventually it came out the other side and they started making a film of it. But by that point, the novel had come out and was a bestseller. So they then tweaked it to be a bit more like the novel compared to what he had originally written. And then they had all the script doctors come in and then tweak it a bit more to make it more like a film based on a novel, based on a script. I mean, would it have been better if it had released 5 years before? Would it have a better reception? I mean, you know, the sort of some of the things that they were able to do, like the visual effects and stuff, might not have been there.
Definitely, yeah.
But would the reception possibly have been a bit kinder to it? Not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it might have changed the direction of sci-fi, maybe, if it sort of got out before these kind of summer blockbustery type movies. I mean, because, you know, this did well. I mean, it made 171 million off a 90 million budget. Its ratings are pretty decent across kind of aggregate sites, as much as you believe in that. And, you know, the big hitters of the day, your Roger Eberts, all rated it really well. So I think it was a success, but wasn't a smash hit. But I kind of get it. It's not what people wanted. But if it had come out, as you said, like, so I think he wrote it at the end of the 70s. If it had come out then with Close Encounters and then E.T., around that kind of that era, this would have done gangbusters, right? Or if it comes out later, along with kind of Arrival and Interstellar, and again, it fits in those two worlds, which is really interesting, but not kind of where it came out.
Yeah, I can definitely see a world where it sort of came out in the original window that it was hoping to, and then it would have had a remake around the Interstellar time, which would have been really interesting to see. I mean, who knows? We may still see a remake. It's been I don't actually want to think about how many years it's been since it came out. But yeah, it's been a while, so we may see one. But I think that would have been, I think, as you say, it probably would have changed the way that we see a lot of sci-fi films, like, you know, the way that Solaris and that kind of thing, that really changed the way that people looked at sci-fi at the time.
Oh, that's interesting. That must have been around here as well. The Clooney version of Solaris. Is that what you talking about, the original? I was talking about the original, sort of the impact that made, but I imagine because that was early 70s. The Clooney one was 2002. I just looked it up. So
okay,
that was not long after. So again, trying to be a smart sci-fi.
Yeah, 2002. So
yeah,
by
Sunshine,
the time
the Danny Boyle movie must have been out around about then as well. So they were some smart sci-fis kicking around, right?
It's quite possible that, you know, this was 97, so 2002. That's kind of the right sort of window that people are looking and going, do you know what? Maybe we'll give it a go. Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure 97 also Armageddon came out, which is very much not. Or maybe that was 98, but it was definitely around here as well. And
it was around then, yeah.
I love Armageddon. It's bloody brilliant. Yeah. And I think, you know, Michael Bay has his faults, but Armageddon is one of those ones for me which is high on the list. I'm not even going to call it guilty because I do not feel any guilt whatsoever, of just pure pleasure. I think that movie's great.
Yeah, I do as well. As long as you sort of, you know, not just suspend your disbelief, but possibly suspend quite a few of your brain cells. Love it. Absolutely love it. It does exactly what it wants to do.
What's the best way to stop this meteor? Send miners up for sure. But
absolutely.
That famous drunk Ben Affleck like director's commentary clip is almost as good by itself as the whole movie too. Like, but says for like, he's just like, fuck it, so what? We're having a good time. It was great fun, and you know, I was just looking. That's 550 million. So that is definitely the sort of sci-fi people were wanting, rather than Contact around the late 90s.
Yeah, that's a big old difference, isn't it? Like you can look at Contact and say it did all right. Like you say, compared to the budget, it did all right. You look at, you know, the rankings of the year. It's quite hard to judge because it was a bit of a. I mean, was it number one Titanic? So, you know, whatever. But I don't think it even makes the top 10 of that year.
I wouldn't have thought. Yeah, not with that. No.
But then you kind of put that to one side and say, oh, it was one of those years. But then when you compare it to sort of the amount of money that made, it did all right. But did it reach its full potential? Yeah, maybe not. Looking through the mirror dimension, you know, what could have been if it had poked its nose out a little bit earlier, or even, dare I say, a little bit later, and had a bit of time to see the influence of those other films, you know, to see the audience reactions and maybe giving it a bit more of a thought to how to bring it all together and give it to the audience in a way that they'd like. Yeah,
I know, I agree. And, you know, you mentioned remake, I think, so yeah, it's nearly 30 years since this came out. So I have said it for you. I'm sorry about that.
Which
is the Solaris gap from the original to the remake. The sort of person that I think this would do really well in the right hands for this, I think, is somebody like Damon Lindelof. So he's behind kind of Lost, The Leftovers, the Watchmen TV series. So he operates more in TV than he does in movies. But I think he must be a fan of this movie because all his shows, and those 3 shows I've mentioned, I think are masterpiece works of TV, all have this kind of faith versus science debate at its center, which this very much does as well. I think he could do something really, really special with this story.
Yeah. And I mean, I was about to say something really controversial of,
do it.
Could you turn it into a TV show?
I think you could, yeah.
I mean, it has the potential, but it would, it would be quite the risk, I think. But it does have that potential, on the Lost side of things, and
like a limited series, 6 episodes, an hour long each. This is already 2.5.
Yeah, that's true.
As a movie, so if you're fleshing it out and you're building the world out and you're doing more in terms of the investigations and you're doing maybe some more X-File-y like stuff going on and more of the government conspiracy, and definitely this could become a limited series, I think, for sure.
Yeah, especially if you lent more into the way that the book is framed.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Talk to me about that, because I have not read the book. It's on my list.
Well, I won't spoil it too much, but it is, again, it's that if you wrote the 3-line plot synopsis, it would be the same. But it just gives it a lot more room to actually fill out all these things that people possibly have had problems with over the years. The more of the concepts, I don't know, some people will have seen the film and will say, what more of the concepts? But it fills them out, and it actually ties up some of that loose ends that you come away with. Kind of, it touched on so many different things, but didn't really go in too deep to them. So sometimes you feel like the movie's just bouncing around all over the place. The book's really good at tying it in together more. So you actually get more of this idea of the religious side versus the military side versus the science side, and how they all talk together. And the investigations, and you get more about our billionaire Haddon, and sort of the impact that has made, and the sort of way that science across the world has to come together to make this happen. But also, politics being the way it is, it doesn't just fit in together and everyone go, hooray! Let's all do this as one big happy world. So yeah, if you sort of lent into that, you could probably make, a limited series out of it. It would drag out the time more, but it would fill in those little details that, if you flick through some of the reviews, people are screaming their heads off about, that they hate the film because of, even the ending. They actually try and make sense of the ending. Which is hilarious reading some of the reviews. But I think it's, as I say, it's the same sort of plot. All the main beats are the same, but it actually gives it room to breathe, rather than being a little bit of a mishmash and you kind of have to do the work yourself, which, there is a place for that. But you do have to be prepared for it.
That's interesting. It does feel that at times, because I want to talk about the opening shot in a second for sure, and I definitely want to get your 3-line plot synopsis. So don't let you get away of not giving that.
No. I've committed to 3 lines now.
Start thinking now. Get it narrowed down. But I really like the opening act, which is kind of the SETI stuff and the waiting for the signal, and then there's a really nice injection of pace, and I think all of that is really, really interesting. But then it sort of becomes, this isn't the right term, but it sort of becomes a courtroom drama for a while. it's not in a courtroom, it's a boardroom drama, I suppose, is better. It sort of becomes a boardroom drama of like people in suits sitting around making decisions. And yeah, that feels like a real shift in pace and feels like not a drag. I'm still enjoying it, but I can see that in that limited series, that becomes a couple of episodes and we delve more into the politics of, as you said, of world politics and how that works, and people making decisions that are, some are trying to do it for the benefit of mankind and some are doing it for the benefit of their own agendas. And that would become an interesting kind of political subplot. Whereas here, it just feels like there's not enough for us to understand the machinations that are going on behind what we're shown.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. You know, you get the introduction, they're at Arecibo, it's great, everyone's loving life. Then suddenly it all kicks off, and then they have to move over to New Mexico. And then they're living life again, but it's all, you know, all the politics, and it becomes all West Wing, and then you're wondering why Rob Lowe isn't in that bit, and then it all just gets a bit confusing.
He is in it, but just not in that bit.
Yeah, he's in the wrong bit, people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a very confused start. It is almost like you need to read some sort of blurb about the film before you go into it, because you either need to prepare yourself or you don't know what you're going to watch, or you need to prepare yourself exactly for what you're going to watch, because you could very much start off and think it's one film, and then 5-10 minutes later you think it's a completely different film, and then 20 minutes later again it's a completely different film again. And it's just got too many weird little dangly bits that are trying to cover in so many different ways. And yeah, it's kind of designed for weirdos like me who's going, oh yeah, I got that reference. But if you don't have that weird knowledge, then yeah, I can see that it would be confusing / annoying.
It has like kind of Malikia moments. We'll talk about that opening in a second. That feels very Terrence Malick, feels very like Tree of Life. And Ted Chiang, who wrote Arrival, which is a wonderful short story, and one of those rare occasions where I think I think the film is better than the short story that's based on, and the short story is brilliant. Okay. So that says how good the film is. I mean, he must have seen this. Have you seen Arrival with Amy Adams? So he, like, the writer of the short story that film was based on, he must have seen this, because there's like that kind of geopolitical sense that's in Arrival that drives that, again, the second half of that movie into the finale of like, can people work together, is definitely pulled from here, I think.
Yeah, and you can see the themes that they're trying to go for. You know, you can see the ideas of the grand plan of the story, and, you know, as you say, people trying to work together, and people have different ideas of what's important, and they have their own, you know, personal ideas. They have greater political ideas, and all of these things are butting heads against each other. You can see all those pieces. It just frustrates. Yeah, I have seen the film. I haven't read the short story, but you can definitely see the kind of some of the lines that are going through from this film to the other ones. I would be interested to read that story, actually.
Yeah, you should pick up, get it on your library app. We were just talking before as well about library apps and how good they are. Absolutely, yeah. I thoroughly recommend it. I mean, that whole book of short stories is excellent.
Right. And
I think we were talking as well just before we started recording about that sense of like living in these kind of dense intellectual sci-fi worlds is fun to do for a while, then you have to kind of put them aside. So I'm really keen to pick up a couple of Carl Sagan novels and either read or listen to them as an audiobook if I can get them that way as well, because I feel like that might be kind of a nice way to like listen to a bit and then go away and have like a frothy podcast for a bit and then come back to it. And
yeah,
sometimes you feel like you need that kind of a bit of a release whilst your brain's working some of this stuff out.
Yeah, it definitely. as I say, it kind of fills in a lot of the details, which is really good because you get a bigger picture and it kind of all those pieces start bringing together. But it is definitely it is even more thinky than the film is, but in that way that it does guide your hand.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the difference. That's the difference between a film like this and a film like Arrival. Is in Arrival, your hand is guided and you kind of know where you're going and it helps you along. On here, you're kind of left to your own devices to pick up the pieces of what you're interested in. Which I can absolutely see a place for. And if you're a weirdo nerd like me, you can pick up loads of different pieces. But if you are just here for, one or two of those pieces, then, you're kind of going to get left behind a bit. And as amazing as Jodie Foster's acting is, it will only get you so far in this one if you're not prepared. Because it is amazing, by the way. The amount of emotion that she brings to this film, frankly, is ridiculous. It is almost like she read a different script to everybody else in this film because she's working on a completely different level to them. The amount of subtlety and depth in her character is frankly ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree.
And yeah, I mean, I want to see a story just of her, really.
I think it fits in this.
She's gone through.
Sorry, yeah, I think it fits in this world though because, like Rhea was discussing about potentially coming on, and I can see why. I mean, we haven't worked it out, but I think that's a shame. And if she sends me some thoughts before this goes out, I'll include them. But I think she would have a lot to say because I think Jodie Foster was the right person for the role. I mean, the way that she carries herself as well, she has this aura about her which draws people in. I think she is almost like a center of gravity herself. She draws people in. She's kind of got, I don't know, there's an effervescence about her in this that you don't normally associate with her, I don't think, which is really interesting. She's as a character and so therefore as an actress in her performance. But unfortunately, a lot of the people that kind of get pulled into this gravity well are these men that are kind of constantly trying to control her or the decisions that she knows are right and trying to change her mind or like decide her fate for her, really. It's a really interesting kind of feminist movie in that way. And I think that's why Rhea would have had a lot to say about how you have these men, and they're not always bad guys. We're going to talk about Matthew McConaughey and his role as Palmer Joss. He's not a bad guy at all, but he is still another man in this movie who's trying to kind of control her for his own means. I think that's a really interesting aspect to the movie, and I think you needed somebody strong like Jodie Foster who can hold her own amidst all of that in order to make that work, I think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I read one of the reviews was, I mean, it was spot on. It had nothing to do with most of the film, but it just basically said, this is mansplaining the movie. And that is exactly what it is. It's like you have the smartest person in the room who is trying her best to get this shit done. And you have all these idiot men who are just basically trying to flex their power and trying to get into whatever position that they want to be in. Putting her down, pushing her aside, talking over her. And somehow she still manages to go through the whole movie without punching anyone.
Yeah.
Quite
impressive, huh? Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, she verbally punches a few people through her smarts. I hear you. Yeah. But she resists the temptation to actually take that to a physical stage. I mean, one of them gets blown up. I mean, maybe if he didn't get blown up, she might have done. But actually, she had a good opportunity to do that way before, didn't she? And she chose to be the bigger person in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And it does, especially for sort of when you compare it to some of the movies of the time, it does kind of push some of the expectations. When we get introduced to Matthew McConaughey and they have their super speed relationship in one day. And then she's just the one that's like, right, I've got to go. Leave me a number.
Yeah.
I'm off. Bye. Busy. Make yourself breakfast.
There's kind of like gender swapping here, isn't there? Like that kind of like swapping is not the right word. That's a different type of gender. Gender swapping is not what I mean. They like switch the roles of like kind of masculine and feminine here, haven't they? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, when you compare it to a lot of the films that are sort of around at the time, it's quite impressive. And she just, and it's not played up. It's not, she just gets on with it.
And leaves him as being the kind of love-lorn, like forlorn.
Yeah.
He's clearly totally in love with her, and it doesn't see her for like 5 years or something.
Yeah.
And is still in love with her.
Yeah.
He's carrying that with him. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, she's amazing in it, I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a shame that Rhea's not here because she would put it in words much better than we would.
We've tried.
But yeah, we've tried. We've tried our best. I promise we tried, Rhea.
No, she's certainly the linchpin, and I think this film would have fallen down if it hadn't had a strong actress like her at the middle. And I'm not really sure who else at this time when it came out, who else could have carried it off, if I'm honest.
No, it's hard to think of anyone who would be able to give it that depth and range that she did. She's calm and caring and soft, and then suddenly completely manic, and but in every point it seems like that's the right reaction. At no point are you thinking that's a bit weird, she's gone a bit bonkers there. You can just think, yeah, I can see that. I would probably react like that as well. I would be the crazy person running through the fields screaming my head off. Or I would be the one just walking away from Matthew McConaughey saying, I've got something to do, bye.
Chance would be a fine thing, huh? No, she's driven, isn't she? She's driven and she has a passion and she believes in what she's doing. And these men keep trying to get in her way, and then she's not going to let them, which I think is really interesting. And you're right, she does have a couple of moments where it's like I don't know how, I don't want to describe it in a way which is kind of diminishing it, but there are moments where she doesn't lose control, but she does let her emotions kind of guide what she's saying. So particularly it's like the book when she's going looking for funding, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's the scene which stands out to me, and she kind of puts her stuff down and she walks right up to the cocky wankerish like 24-year-old guy who's there representing what's their billionaire called? I can't think what his name is. Is it Hamlish or something like that?
Haddon Industries.
Yeah. So he's like representing him, isn't he? Which I'm sure has been done ironically and on purpose. And she is like very kind of emotional and forthright and kind of loses control. Like I said, it's not right, but I think you know what I mean. And people that have seen it will know what I mean. Like she's in the moment, but it's still, like you said, it's not without reason. It's not without cause. It's not hysterical woman stereotypes. It's just somebody who knows she's right and she just can't get anybody to listen to her.
It's exasperated person who is kind of not losing control, but getting fed up of the situation. Yeah. And it's not, as you say, it's not, oh, you're being hysterical. It's, this is your livelihood. You're battling for your livelihood. And in the end, they see that and they sort of follow through.
Yeah. And that's such a hard line to toe, I think, as an actress, to know how far to go and where to stop and not take it too hysterical, but also go far enough that we really believe how important this is to her, because we need to be invested in that story, because with all these other things that are going on, we need to be with Ellie. We need to believe in her every step of the way. I think she matches up with like kind of early season Fox Mulder for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good comparison, actually.
You've got to totally buy into their worldview and what they believe. And at times, Fox seems like he's crazy and mad, but you still want him to be right. And I think Ellie doesn't seem crazy and mad, but you want her to be right. You want her to succeed in the end.
yeah, driven with an almost manic energy, but not crazy.
That's nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. I like that because you're rooting for them. You know that they care, but it doesn't go over to the other side of being overbearing or overreacting to the situation. It's you're there in there with their frustrations, even though, we're only probably at this point, we're only like 5-10 minutes into the movie, but it feels like it's been 20 years. But you seem invested, and you've only sort of seen snippets of it, and it's kind of, but you're there with her and you're invested, and you completely understand what she's going through. And that's because she's expressed 20 years in her acting.
Yeah. No, I agree. And it's counterbalanced by like the quieter moments. Like, so when we're jumping way ahead, but when Drummond gets picked to be the person to go make contact, the way she handles that first time she sees him after there's like 10 candidates, isn't there? But really it's kind of the two of them. Because they're the only two people we've seen on screen. We don't know who these other people are. So it's clearly not going to be one of these who are just going to suddenly go, hello. Yeah, the way she handles
that's
that.
Another, sorry. That reminded me, that was another way that they sort of swapped the roles, is because the only other one that we saw was an astronaut, a male astronaut, who we only see him in the news clip basically saying that his kids wanted him to stay behind.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So he's decided not to go forwards because he wants to be with his family and be with his kids. Yeah. Good shout. Yeah, I like that.
But yeah, sorry, interrupted.
No, it's good. Yeah, just that the counterbalancing of those two scenes of like when she needs to, she does it, and then she gets what she wants. Right, she gets the funding. But then when it's right to rein it in and to know to handle the situation differently, she's intellectually and emotionally smart, isn't she? She knows I've got to be the bigger person here, and it's about the mission. It's not about me. It's about the mission. So I think all of that is beautifully written and beautifully acted.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's like you say, it's putting a mission first. You could easily say, I didn't get what I wanted. You cheated. You lied. You said what they wanted. I'm off ski because you've basically spent the last however many years trying to steal my life from me.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. My research, my discovery, now like my... Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think she's an unsung kind of icon in this kind of cinema, really. You think of like, Ripley, Sarah Connor, these kind of characters which are put up on this kind of pedestal being like really iconic characters, like Ellie Sattler in Jurassic Park. I think all these people deservedly so. We look at them and think they're massively important characters in cinema. I think this character of Ellie Arroway is up there as well. I think the way that her character is written and performed is something to be admired.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's like the normal person's Ripley. We're not going to go out there and beat up aliens, but everyone's going to have their own struggles of being mansplained to and, having the idiots trying to take control. And it's this way of, fighting for what you want and fighting for what you believe is right. But also having, I don't know what the right word is, but sort of having the control to know what battles to fight and how to fight them and to get to that end goal in the right way.
No, I think you have put that right.
I think we could all learn something from that.
Oh, definitely. Right, well, we've jumped all over the place, so that was great. I really enjoyed that. But you promised me a 3-line synopsis of this movie. So before we kind of think any more about where this film goes, yes, for those that haven't seen Contact, we're obviously spoiling the hell out of it already, but we will continue to spoil it. What's your 3-line synopsis for Contact?
It would be... We receive a signal from outer space. We find information in that signal we follow that information, have a nice chat with aliens.
Nice. I love that. Yeah. I like it. I think that's totally fair. And I think, when we're talking about like it's quite a straight linear narrative plot, that is it, right?
Yeah.
Just get the signal, build machine, go there.
Yeah.
That's
go there,
kind of
have a chat, come back.
Yeah. or do we go there actually?
Well, yeah.
We'll get to that bit, I think, as well. Yeah, no, I think that's perfect. And then Ellie's the anchor. Ellie is literally the arrow. I think, that name's been very deliberately chosen, hasn't it? There's no subtlety here. Through this kind of journey, she's the one that passionately believes that, like, spending, before the signal comes through, like spending time scouring kind of infinite space, hoping to find the signal is worthwhile. She's that kind of lone voice, isn't she? So therefore you kind of understand why she feels like, then I should be the one, because I'm the only one that kind of believed that this was going to happen anyway. Yeah,
you've got so many people that are trying to shut her down all along the way. And when it's proven that actually she was right, suddenly they're like, oh, well.
Yeah.
Well,
let me just take
hold your horses. Yeah.
As you said, let me talk all over you in a meeting. And
Yeah, exactly. And then let me pretend that I knew this all along and that you're just here to change the slide for me.
It's actually, that's a really good. It's actually really like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Pop out and get us a cup of tea, love.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
It is at times. It's quite hard to watch. Yeah. I love that scene though, when the signal comes through. I think the build up, I really like the pace here. I think the first act pace is, I'm in it. I'm really enjoying it. Just kicking back, hanging with Ellie and seeing kind of the world she lives in and understanding a bit more about what SETI is and how that works. And then that signal comes through and it's just kind of like a boop, beep, boop. Or, that's a really bad impression, but like, it's just like almost like vibrational noise, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the injection of pace there, she's like, what? And the headphones are on, and then she's driving the car and she's on the phone and the guys are back in the station and they're getting the dishes moving. And like, suddenly it's like, whoa, this is like an action movie. It's like Twister or something. And there's a tornado coming behind her, but it's a tornado of kind of excitement. And like, my belief has been like rewarded. I think that moment, I think, is brilliant.
Yeah. She's really channeling the other Ellie on that one in Jurassic Park. It's, you kind of get you go through the motions of how important she feels it is, but also sort of the slow pace of this is a long journey. And then suddenly that immediate excitement of actually this is happening now and all bets are off and everything that you've worked for, you have to prove yourself in the next 2 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then I like that again, that sudden slow pace again. Like if in a different movie, it'd be like, oh, now the aliens are here. What? But here, it's slowed down. It's like investigative of like the signal and the different sounds. And I like William Fichtner's character. He's kind of the only decent bloke in it, really.
Yeah, pretty much.
He's blind, isn't he? I think in the movie, so he's almost like Daredevil, extrasensory hearing, so he can hear things other people. I'm not sure about that part of the story, but so we'll go with it. But he's a decent bloke, and he like respects Ellie and her opinion, and he's the only one really, isn't he? He supports her in that way. So I like kind of all this section, and they're working out on the screens. There's a signal hidden in there, and that's all kind of cool. It's almost like like I say, like an investigative, like journalism movie at this point as well. Yeah,
that kind of brings in that. That Independence Day, we're trying to figure out what's going on and, what's happening and everything's kicking off, but is it really kicking off? And, what do we do now? It injects a little bit of pace after you've been, you've had the boardroom and wanting to punch men in the face for a bit.
Yeah, because it's probably, as you said, it's probably about half an hour, to be fair, that kind of first section.
Yeah, it must be. By the time you get to that point, it's got to be at least half an hour, and that's the kind of bit that doesn't feel like it. I think it's this next bit that you kind of feel the pace slow a bit, but that first half hour, as you say, you kind of, it feels right. It's got a nice overview, but you're also getting the idea of what they're doing and how important it is, and then aliens and excitement and Independence Day and Fifth Element, and it all kicks off.
Yeah, I mean, you get, as you said, we've already met McConaughey by here. He comes in, I clocked it about 11 minutes in.
Right.
Instant kind of McConaughey charm, luscious locks, luscious like curly mullet in this movie. Like not mucking around. I mean, I get it. Like we said, Jodie Foster in this movie, she has a gravitational pull. I get why he'd want to go to a table and chat her up. I'm not criticizing him, but he goes in hard. It's like, let's go out for dinner tonight. Basically, let's hook up right now. Like he's not mucking around, this guy, which becomes really interesting later on when he's like, he was going to train as a priest, and basically the only reason he didn't was because he couldn't keep it celibate. He was like, I'm too much of a horn dog. So that was not the job for me. So I believe, but I gotta have me some sex.
Yeah. I wonder if he wrote that line himself.
Yeah. It feels slightly reductive, but that is definitely what his character is saying.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much. It's hard to sort of look at that scene and go, hang on, calm down a bit.
I did feel that way. Yeah.
If
that was my daughter. Excuse me, young man.
Yeah, it does almost that. Out of all the film, that's probably the scene that kind of doesn't feel like it fits the most. Everything else you can kind of excuse for its various weirdness in politics and religion and just weirdness. But that does almost feel like we need to introduce him now, quick. Because
people seem to complain about the most is whether they buy into kind of the romantic subplot that it kind of trickles through this movie. It's not the main feature, as you said. Like she owns the next scene. They do hook up, and she's kind of kicks him and says to the curb and says, "On your bike, I've had my fun, and now my job's the most important thing to me. So I'll see you around." So it sort of trickles, doesn't it, and kind of comes back at certain points, and they don't see each other for long periods. And I don't know, did you buy into their chemistry and whether you thought they were a couple that were going to make it?
I bought into him as a horn dog.
Sure.
But kind of not really the rest of it. I mean, I get that she would find him interesting. I would be fascinated. I did try and find if someone had looked at this, but I couldn't find anything. I'd be fascinated to actually see the screen time of all the different characters. Because Matthew McConaughey is on the poster. He gets second billing. But I struggle to actually, how much of the film is he actually in?
Yeah, no, I hear you.
And a lot of the times, how much is there a point of him being in it? And it does almost feel like at this scene in particular, they were like, right, quick, we've got to shoehorn him in. We've got to introduce him, because otherwise we've kind of lost the point of why he's there. We need to find a reason for them to have this attachment.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? The stuff with them feels a little bit kind of airport thriller novel type romance. This is their meet cute, and then they won't see each other for a while, and they'll meet up again. And isn't it crazy that he's the guy who's going to be in opposition to her because he believes in faith and she believes it? Yeah, I hear you. I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as a lot of people make out. I think I just about buy them. I think he's good. I don't think he's bad at all. Sort of just about buy them. And like I say, I buy him wanting to be with Ellie. It feels like there's a couple of subplots that are a bit unnecessary in this movie, and this may be one of them. I don't know what it adds to Ellie's story, really.
Yeah.
Other than another obstacle.
Yeah. Yeah. In the book, there is definitely more of a verbal religious opposition to some of the things that they're doing, and the religious groups want to have a say in things. I think I get the feeling that they had the strong military character, they had the strong sort of national security fighter. That's quite easy to shoehorn in. They tried it a little bit with good old Rob Lowe, but it wasn't really. It didn't feel like that was really sitting where they needed it to be. So this feels like their way of bringing in that religious element, which is, great. I can understand that part of the story, but it just feels like they didn't quite put the pieces together properly. Like they didn't need to be in a relationship. They could have had a really long conversation in that first bit about everything. And then maybe it's only later on that she finds out that actually he's, part of this religious group. And then that maybe brings in the sort of questions where he's suddenly in this meeting and then he's brought in as the God person. And she's like, hang on, but we had this like 2-hour-long conversation, a really in-depth conversation about science and aliens and blah, blah, blah. It feels like that part of it had to be in there, but it was kind of done in slightly the wrong way.
Well, I think it had to be in there to sell that. I don't know for who, I don't know, but like there's a romance angle too. There's a bloke that blokes can be interested in. There's a, I mean, I think it feels like more of like almost like a marketing decision. When I know Zemeckis went after McConaughey, he wanted him, and he dropped out of being in The Jackal, which became a Bruce Willis vehicle, in order to be in this. I'm sure you read the same thing. So he had clear intentions. I don't know. I just think I also read that his whole point of this movie, and I think this point does come across, is that kind of science and faith can coexist. There's a crossing of those two axes, but I think you get that with Ellie. I think Ellie is a hard science person at the start of the movie, and by the end, she's a hard science person that has faith and belief in something else. And so I think you get that journey anyway. So I just feel, you don't need his additional faith to support her. She gets it through what she experiences in the movie. So it just feels like his character's a bit superfluous, unfortunately. Yeah.
It was almost like you've got this whole film that is very thinky and very deep. And then it was like you say, they're thinking, right, we need this way of science and religion coexisting. And then suddenly they forgot all about all the thinky stuff.
Yeah,
and then we're just like, really literally, we have to have science and religion coexisting. And it's almost like they forgot what they were doing with the rest of it.
No, I agree. Pump the brakes. They're at a party, so they're both going to wear, he's going to wear a dinner suit and she's going to wear a cocktail dress, and they're both going to look really handsome. They're both going to have luscious curly locks, and they'll have a bit of a flirt. But it doesn't really add anything. So I feel sorry. I don't feel sorry for him because I think he's still good, and I still think this adds to his legacy of characters. And I think this is an important movie for him at this point because he felt like he wanted to be playing people who aligned with his kind of world view. That's definitely going to be important soon when he starts going down the rom-com route. But no, I agree with you. I think, his name's second. He's on the poster. He'd become a massive star because of A Time to Kill. If we flip those two movies, if this came out before A Time to Kill, I don't think he's on the poster. I don't think he's second billing.
No.
I think because he's big, everyone is wondering what Matthew McConaughey is going to do next. He's put up top in the billing. Yeah.
He's not the second most influential character of the film. He's not the second screen time. It does seem very like they could have made him both of those things. There is definitely a way to tell this story where he is like the two of them are going through this journey together. And then that would have made a bit more sense for having both of them there, but it's not an ensemble, it's her, really.
Yeah, agreed.
This is her journey and all the people that she has to deal with along the way. I can understand the story that they're trying to tell, but mostly I think because I read the book. If I hadn't read the book, would I be as forgiving? I can't remember my thoughts on the first time I watched it. So I can't comment how I would feel without having read the book, but I don't know if I would be as forgiving.
No, I think that's fair.
And like, as you say, he is doing a good job on what he's been given. Like, this isn't to take away from him, but it does feel like they didn't really know what to do with him.
Yeah, I agree. Totally. I think when he's there and he's got a purpose, I think his quality shines through. Like the bit that stands out to me is when he's on the fake Larry King interview.
Yeah.
That segment, which is you see sort of through the TV screen, but you also see in the studio, and you hear them talking with kind of above the earth, and it's all crackly, and that might be the time when the signal's coming through. I think they're like cracking the next part of the signal. Like it's quite a key moment, but it's kind of been juxtaposed with him on TV talking about science and technology and how it's kind of, is it really advancing society or is it forcing us apart? Some of this is quite prescient, I think, is quite truthful of what's happened in society. It almost has a kind of like Tyler Durden-esque like quippiness to it at times, where he's the way that he's kind of delivering his lines. It's almost like in a parallel universe. Think about the kind of movie we're talking about. He probably could have pulled off that character in the way that he's kind of delivering some of these lines. So yeah, I certainly don't think it's him. And I don't think it's the performance. It's just you're right. The character is just a bit lost amongst everything else that's going on.
Yeah. It's a shame because that might have been the missing piece.
Yeah.
That could have been the bit that for the thinky people, they've got their bit. But if you're not the thinky person, and sometimes this film is a bit of a struggle for the person who doesn't want to think. That could have been the bit that helps you along. Person who's guided by not the science and everything else, but by the passion and the heart more. Which obviously she is as well, but in combination with all the other things that she's she believes in. But it could have been that thing that just ties the two sides of it together a bit more.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think that's great, and I think also because you have that additional. You're right. We've got Rob Lowe as this kind of right wing, like hard religious advisor to the president, don't you? We've definitely got to talk about the president as well in this, and how that's done. But you also get that like militant kind of religious group who plant the bomb. So I think because you've got that character as well. And that subplot, that's kind of doing the pushing the kind of religious angle in a totally different direction, which I'm not saying they should have done that with Palmer's character. But again, like, do we need Palmer's kind of religious angle and Rob Lowe's religious angle? And I can't think what the character's name is. And the Jake Busey, like up on a soapbox preaching. And then I think that's the worst part of the movie for me. I do not buy in any way whatsoever that this kind of. I'm trying to put it politely how you would view these kind of people, but these kind of people that you would walk past on the street, they're kind of Rorschach type, wearing what they call wearing like the sandwich boards, shouting with a loudspeaker. He's that kind of religious nut. I'm going to use that word a little bit carefully, and he manages to secret his way onto the ground crew at the base and blow it up. I mean, I don't buy that at all. I don't know about you.
No, he was quite vocal and quite obvious. The fact that nobody recognised him.
Yeah, he's not a subtle looking guy, Jake Busey. No,
no, he is. Quite making a bit of a spectacle of himself. And he just managed to get probably onto the most secure place on the planet at that time. Other than the secret site. It's hard to buy that one. I can understand that they almost have she's like the normal science, and then what's his face? He's like the extreme science at everyone else's expense, almost.
The billionaire Haddon.
No, what's his?
Drumlin. Who keeps stealing all their glory.
Yeah. So, and then you've got those two sides of the science side, and So maybe they were trying to do the two extremes of the religion side as well. Yeah, but yeah, again, it's just like there's just again that just extra layer that, as you say, wasn't quite necessary there. Like poor old Rob Lowe. I mean, I love Rob Lowe, but what was what's the point of his character at all?
Yeah. I mean, he's got like one scene, maybe two tops.
Yeah, I think he's got one in-person scene and one scene where he's seen on the TV screen.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like what that could have been sorted out. Because again, like Matthew McConaughey, you kind of, at no point is it explained why suddenly he's in the White House.
It's just one drop line, isn't it, on that Larry King interview? You're right, but it's not like it's just like, oh, you've got a number one bestseller, and now you're in the White House cabinet, and you're like, what?
Yeah,
it doesn't work like that. Sorry.
Yeah, that's well.
You're a spiritual
up
advisor.
Until this year. Okay, that's not how it usually works.
Yeah.
So yeah, like those two could have been amalgamated a bit better.
Agreed. Yeah.
Possibly, and you could have had the two extremes in an easier way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it just feels like they were just trying to add an extra layer for no real reason.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only reason is it's another hurdle, isn't it? It's just about putting hurdles in Ellie's way, and at some point they just become the impact by now. I think is lost. Like the Drumlin hurdle is an important one because it's kind of that archetypal douchebag boss who's stealing your glory. Like everyone's experienced that at some point. With the added element for her, of course, that it's a man that's doing it. So it's a man that's trying to control her because he's the guy who's initially controlling the funding, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they're getting the funding and it's Haddon supporting her, but he's a billionaire and he's a kook and he's weird. And does she really want to be kind of associated with this guy? But she has to do it in order. So these hurdles kind of make sense. And then we just start adding in more and more and more and more, which just feel like hurdles for the sake of hurdles.
Yeah. It does feel like, I don't know, it does almost feel like you're trying to make the point in so many different ways and driving it home a bit too much. I mean, I imagine there are plenty of women in science who are like, this is how I feel every single day.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, absolutely.
I do.
All walks of life, I imagine. But yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And maybe that's part of the point of it, but it's not really put forward in that way.
Mm-hmm.
It is as you say, it's sometimes hurdles for the sake of hurdles. And you get to the point of they're just adding them in and then knocking them down again straight away. And it's not adding anything to it.
Now that's it. You got it there. That's the point, isn't it? It's that they don't increase the difficulty for her. It's just something else to dismiss quite quickly. Like the Drumlin one is one which rolls on, not to make a drum pun. That is one which like comes back and comes back and comes back. He's like the main thorn in her side, and that makes sense, doesn't it? But you're right. That is the problem, is that these new ones that come in, whilst that long running problem is there, it's just like, oh, there it is, now it's done. There it is, now it's done. But then I also really liked what you said then as well, that probably that is really realistic. There's two white guys here talking. I think that's a really insightful thing you said, that is trying to represent there are these constant hurdles that are put in the way for smart, intelligent, capable women who just want to do the job and just want to do it the best they can. And that's probably how they feel on a day-to-day basis. I think that's insightful. Yeah.
Like even when it comes down to the selection board and he just says what they want to hear.
Yeah.
But he also says afterwards, I wish we lived in a world where you telling the truth, was what got you forward. But we don't live in that world.
Yeah.
But you could have done.
Yeah.
You made that choice yourself. Mm-hmm. If you hadn't have made that choice, then that is the world that would have been here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Surprise. Surprise, your choices have consequences. I wonder how that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. yeah. Anyway, distracting myself there. With anger.
No. I think it's a really key line of the movie, isn't it? In terms of this main hurdle that Ellie's overcoming. I think you're right. Is that she just does what is right, whether it's for her or not. Her moral compass, and a compass is a big part of this movie in terms of a plot device, but her moral compass is set to north constantly.
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes from her kind of childhood tragedy, doesn't it? That she lost her mum in childbirth, and then she loses her dad when she's 10, maybe. I'm not sure, but
yeah, something like that.
The Jenna Malone, the actress that plays young Jodie Foster, is very convincing as a young Jodie Foster, I have to say, in those scenes.
Yeah.
But I think the way they handle that in terms of how it drives Ellie is really interesting. I think so many times we see this kind of childhood tragedy being a hindrance to a character, whereas here it becomes a really positive motivating factor for her, and it's a really refreshing take on that kind of it's not led her down a dark path. I'm sure there's been difficult times, but actually what it's done is provided her with this constant motivation to discover and to think about, is there life after death, and what else is out there, and is there meaning to life? And she's driven by these questions, which definitely all stems from the difficult start she's had in life.
Yeah Right from the beginning, it's so she gets given this ham radio, and her mum's already died, and she has this conversation with the dad. Do you think we'll be able to contact mum? And he says, no, there's no antenna big enough for that. And that's almost like the driving journey, just to try and find this biggest antenna that can contact further and further away. And the same thing happens when her dad dies. That's the first thing that she wants to do, is to try and make contact with him in some way. Yeah,
it's the night of a meteor storm, isn't it? So again, it connects her to the kind of stellar nature of the universe. Yeah.
And that's a really interesting change from the book. Because it almost, so we have that one positive male influence, but we also have her dad, probably the only other one. But in the book, if I remember rightly, her mum is still alive. Her dad dies, and then her mum has a new boyfriend who doesn't support her as well as her dad did. So it's almost like in memory of her dad, and to stick two fingers up to the new guy, that she kind of follows through on this path. But I actually prefer this way, in the way that you said. It's like it gives her that drive. It gives her that passion through the whole thing. This is what drives her to what she wants to do and how she lives her life, and the moral compass that she has. I much prefer this way of telling the story.
Yeah, the novel version sounds a little bit rote, a little bit trite, a little bit, that's a trope that's been done a lot of times, isn't it? Whereas this feels, although the trope of dead parent means, it affects your life. Of course it does. Like I said, I think the positive spin here, if it can, if you can spin such a thing positively, I think is really nice. And I think, again, lets you really understand who Ellie is.
Yeah.
That won't stop her. In fact, what it will do will make her search longer and harder and never give up. I was very pleased to see her dad supervising that ham radio session, though. To begin with, I thought he was just going to leave her alone, and I was like, "Whoa, hang on a minute," because there are weirdos on that. I am sure. You need to be
wait until the internet's there.
Well, exactly. The earliest form of those weirdos were on those ham radio sets, I'm sure.
Yes, I can imagine. I try not to imagine, actually. I'm not sure I want to know.
Yeah. And what do you think of David Morse as the dad? Do you think he was well cast? Do you think he was good? Because he comes back at the end, doesn't he? Yeah.
And everyone's favourite love to hate scene. Yeah, I think he was cast really well. He has that personality of someone who they come across as slightly tough and hard. But as soon as they open their mouth, they have that real softness to them. And you can see that in the way that the two of them interact, that like she is his whole world.
Yeah.
And you pick up on that absolutely immediately. And it doesn't fade away. Like the scene at the end as well. That comes back straight away. That softness to him, that that personable nature. I think it's great casting, and he's a great actor.
Yeah, I agree. It almost feels like counter casting to me because I often associate him with bad guys.
Yeah,
kind of like The Rock. I'm trying to think what else now what he's in, but like for some reason The Rock is one that's sticking in my head. He's one of the guys who's on the Alcatraz prison, like supporting, but he sort of plays that kind of. I agree with all the character descriptions, but often that seems to be kind of directed towards kind of not a villainous character, but somebody perhaps with a poor moral compass. I think he's one of the prison guards in the Green Mile, isn't he? But I can't remember whether he's a good one or a bad one. But I don't know. When I see him, I sort of think, oh, bad guy alert. But not here, not at all. And he has a physical presence about him, doesn't he? Particularly when it's young Ellie. But you're right, there's just a softness which is vital for that final scene.
Yeah.
When he comes back let's talk about an our show as we're here, when he comes back as the kind of alien form that chooses to talk to Ellie once she goes through the machine.
Yeah, the sort of representation that she would find most agreeable. To have a little chit chat with little green men from across the galaxy, in a strange scene, which I can never really decide if I like or not.
Yeah, I think I'd be interested again. We talked about remake, and I'd be interested to see how they depicted this now. It feels very CGI. I don't really have a problem with that per se. I guess again that's done on purpose, isn't it? Because I do feel the intention of the end of the movie is meant to be: did this happen or not? Is this real? Is it a dream? Or not a dream, but is it like a construction of Ellie's mind as she passes through the? I know you get that kind of hint of like, oh, well, we recorded for 18 hours, but it has that kind of. Did you ever see like What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams or The Lovely Bones? Like when they're trying to depict these kind of like heavenly body places, it has this kind of like fakeness to it. And
there is a sort of dreamy weemy vibe to it.
Yeah,
it's the very not technical way of saying what you exactly just said.
No, I think it's a bad way of saying it. I think you said it in two words that I was just dithering over. But I guess because they don't really discuss or do anything either, there's no like. I absolutely adore Arrival. I think Arrival is one of the best films made in the last, ever, probably. I think the message it has to say, and I think the performance of Amy Adams, we've been speaking about Jodie Foster, I think the performance of Amy Adams in that movie is astonishing. But that builds up to a climax. There's an important climax to get to in that. Yeah. This doesn't really have a climax. She goes in the machine and she sort of noodles about on a dreamy, weemy beach. Has a theoretical conversation about the future of mankind and then goes back. Yeah. And that's it.
Yeah.
I can see why it rubs people up the wrong way.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah, I do sort of get it in the context of the whole film and the sort of the journey that they're on. But it was also like I mean, if you look at the reviews on this, there will be plenty of reviews that are saying 2 hours and we basically saw her dad.
I mean,
that is basically what happened. And, you just get, this is just how it's been done for millions of years.
Yeah, it takes a long time. This is the first step and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. You get a suggestion that there were aliens beforehand, and as she travels through the wormhole, she gets through this hub, and you can see the sort of edges of a massive structure before she gets whisked away into the next part. And they say that even they don't know where it came from. That was billions of years before. So they've been doing this for millions of years, and then that's been there for billions of years. Just to, blow everyone's head as they're watching this. It's like, whoa, billions of years.
Well, I can tell you,
really
Bill and Ted have also used this wormhole before, because I've seen it in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. It looks exactly the same.
So I wonder what answers they got.
Well, yeah. They picked up Napoleon, Genghis Khan. They just use it to pass their history test. But
yeah, see, maybe she's done that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We've got better answers at the end, I suppose. Yeah, so it kind of gives you the look of there's bigger things out there, which I think is the theme it's trying to go for. But ultimately, they just say, hi, bye.
Yeah, there's no answer, is there, I guess?
No.
And that's hard for some people, particularly if you've invested 2.5 hours into a movie.
Yeah.
Although
at this point, it's about 2 hours because we've still got another half an hour or so of courtroom drama to go. But yeah.
Yeah. I do think so. I was going to say that I do think the opening kind of lets you know. The opening is, 3 minutes, 5 minutes of like a full CGI pullback through the universe. This is that Malikian thing I was talking about earlier on, with kind of radio signals and different sounds. And I can see like already probably the first 5 minutes, that's quite patience testing and quite off-putting for a lot of people. Thinking, like, what the fuck is this? Like, nothing's happening. There's weird sounds. So I think it does kind of come full circle. You start off here. We are going to get back here, guys. It's just going to be a bit in between. It sort of lets you know what film you're in for, I think.
Yeah, and it is cleverly done, that first bit, because as it zooms out, zooms is the wrong word, but as it comes out, and as we go past different planets and through the galaxy, it goes back in time in the recordings. So as you're closest to Earth, it's the most recent, and as it comes back, and then the last one is basically the sounds of the Hitler tape that gets sent back. So it's giving you that picture of what's happening to the signals, and it's giving you a full circle. But again, it's kind of that thing that you have to really be looking for. And as you say, if you're not really listening to what it is, if you're not paying attention, it can really test your patience of, what's the point of this?
Yes.
Apart from just like the Men in Black, is it going to zoom out and it's going to be a load of marbles, or, but yeah, I like it, but I also understand. Yeah.
It just feels a bit underwhelming.
Yeah.
I get it, as same as you. I understand conceptually, and I think it works, but you can't help. We're trained, right? We're trained to build up to a climactic moment in stories. So we expect it whether we want it or not. We expect it. So it just feels a little bit underwhelming.
Yeah. And even like, as you say, we've got the plot device of the compass, that bloody compass, which for the first 3 or 4 times that you see it, I'm starting to get pissed off with this compass, as they sort of angrily pass it between each other. But then it does give her the reason to not be in the chair as it collapses, and, saves her life. And she drifts off to grab the compass to keep her grounded. But again, even that, it's like it's got something to say, but also not really.
Yeah, I mean, another hurdle that was put in her way. She was right. Don't strap me into the chair. That wasn't their design. Men insist on strapping a woman into a chair. Only when she releases herself is she. But then again, is it problematic? She releases herself to get a compass, which is symbolic to her of a man. I don't know. Like, again, take Palmer out of that. That actually has now a much stronger symbolic meaning in that she does it because she knows it's right. Yeah, I think we're back to the kind of the mixed messages here again, aren't we? But I don't think anyone can say that this doesn't have an ambition.
No.
And it does, and it well. Let's phrase this in a way that I should just say things in English rather than doesn't. Does it? This does have an ambition, and it does achieve it. I don't know why I went down the doesn't have an ambition route. This does have an ambition, and I think it achieves that. I think it does what it sets out to do.
Yeah.
And whether you then enjoy that and align with that and like appreciate that, that's up to you, really, isn't it? But I think Zemeckis knew what he wanted to make, and I think he made that movie.
Yeah, I think so. He was very much on board with the vision that Carl Sagan wanted. He was totally bought into it. What changes were made between those intervening years, and then because they had to bring in more writers in various stages, it would be interesting to see what changes were made along the way. But yeah, that they're very bought into the story that they want to tell and the overriding theme that they want. That science, religion, they are different, but they're also not that different. You have to have a certain amount of faith in knowing and not knowing. It's almost like that. I was listening to the radio the other day, and they had someone on who was talking about climate change, and someone phoned in and was like, "What's the evidence?" And the guy was just like, "I have the evidence, but this is a half-hour phone-in show. Like, what do you want from me? This would take hours if you wanted me to go through all of it." But of course, the person who was phoning in wouldn't take it and said, "Well, no, there is no evidence, blah, blah, blah." But you do almost have to have that faith of someone's doing the hard work. You may not understand it, you may not know it, but you have to have that faith that it is there. And I think that's what it's nudging you towards. You can't always prove everything yourself, but you have to have some sort of faith in whatever it is that you believe in. And then, of course, the movie ends by just tearing everyone apart, because that's how we roll.
Yeah. Other than Palmer and Ellie, of course, who get their happily ever after.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, obviously, that was the theme all along.
I've got a little bit of green light, so I've got a couple of letterbox. I've got one big burning question that I've got left that I want to talk about. I'll ask you if you've got any other things you want to talk about as well. So I assume you've seen Forrest Gump, which is Zemeckis' movie before this.
Yes.
Unfortunately, you've seen that. I know lots of people like Forrest Gump. I'm not one of those people. This is a lot better than Forrest Gump. However, he employs the same technique, right, in both, which is like he's building in real world footage and he's like kind of augmenting it or changing it. So we have Bill Clinton in this movie as the president because he is the president at the time. He wasn't very happy about it, as I understand, but it's still there and it still exists in the copies you can rent and buy and stream now. So he got over it. And obviously in Forrest Gump, we have a lot of this kind of footage of historical figures with Forrest Gump in the background or like stood next to them. So my big question to you, this is long-winded, obviously, but thank you for sticking with it. It's almost as long-winded as bloody Contact. Did Robert Zemeckis invent deepfake?
Ooh.
Kind of in a roundabout way, maybe inadvertently.
Yeah.
Did he plant that kernel of this must be the start of it, right?
Yeah. Because I know in reading all the bits and bobs, CNN, following on from this, basically made a rule you cannot use any of our footage in films anymore. Because, they pulled footage from CNN, they pulled footage of the president. They used footage of moon rocks being found, which I think had water in it, or traces of previous water or something. I can't remember. But then they also didn't they use like something from him talking about Kuwait or something? Yeah,
and then like trimmed it to make it sound like he was
so quite different. This is probably the earliest usage of, it's not quite deep fake, but certainly using things out of context. Fake news man.
Yeah, quite. Maybe fake news is the right term instead.
Yeah, it was definitely caused some issues. I can see why.
Yeah, I mean, it rumbles on, doesn't it? I mean, to think that this is back in 97 again, though, that he's kind of toying with this kind of technology and what you can do.
Mm.
And now nearly, I won't say the number again for you, X amount of years later, it's a bigger issue, isn't it? Of this idea of like, where is your identity? Where does it lie? And what control can you have over that? I think it's really interesting to look back now at these kind of texts and think about what people were doing.
Yeah. And it is interesting that Forrest Gump was before this, but this was kind of what upset people.
Yeah.
Because Forrest Gump arguably did it a lot more egregiously and did it more. But I guess this was more out of context.
Yeah.
And probably more worrisome.
Yeah, in Forrest Gump, he's just basically there, isn't he, at historical moments. So I guess they're representing those historical moments truthfully. Whereas here, because they're editing in order to create their own truth in the scene, that's where I guess it becomes more thorny and problematical, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's his fault. He did it.
Yeah. Well, that is, thank you. Thank you for saying that. That's what I wanted to push you to say, really. Was that it's all Zemeckis' fault? Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Shall we hear some words from the man McConaughey himself about his time on Contact?
Oh, yes, definitely.
So I in my research, I read Green Lights, which is his autobiography, memoir. I'm not really sure what the right word is, but it's really, really fascinating, really interesting. I learned a lot about him from this, and Emma, my partner, takes the mick out of me, and she's right to do it. I'm defending her, and she is correct. But I am such a cynical person normally about everything and everyone, like bordering on nihilism probably at times, except for Matthew McConaughey. Something about his like spirituality and his kind of, I don't know what it is. It just wins me over totally. Like his kind of positivity and his spirit. I don't know what it is. So he's changing me. He's changing me to be a less cynical person. So that can only be a good thing, right?
Oh, there you go. He's winning you over. Good job.
Well, he'd already won me over. He's sort of, he's altering my very essence with his positivity. All right. He says, I returned to Hollywood and soon made the decision to play the role of Palmer Joss opposite Jodie Foster and Robert Zemeckis' Contact. So I'm just going to pause. Like, as you know, with Context, it's that he was going to be in The Jackal and he then chose this instead. But I don't know how much you know about him. But after his like breakout success in No Time to Kill, he felt like instead of like cashing in, what he needed to do was to find himself again. So he went on a like spiritual sabbatical down the Amazon River by himself.
As you do.
After having a wet dream.
As you do.
His words, not mine. So yeah, he's been off doing that. He comes back to Hollywood and he makes contacts. After my spiritual journey on the Amazon, my choice to inhabit a man who believed in God and a world of science was very close to the truth of where I was in my own life and where I wanted to spend my time in front of the camera. Jodie Foster was the clear lead, and people questioned why I took the girls' role, as they called it at the time, instead of taking other leading roles I was being offered. But I was more than satisfied with my choice, as I was interested in what I termed philanthropic easy for you to say, philanthropic roles and stories of self-discovery, as well as working with great directors. So very interesting. Like that idea of like kind of the roles being swapped. I think, you absolutely hit the nail on the head there. That's how he felt taking on the role and playing the character of Palmer Joss.
It's interesting. It's interesting that he thought that this was a philanthropic role for him to take, considering he's on the damn poster.
I guess he means more the view of the movie, right? The best thing to do is to look up humanity. But I hear you.
No, that is interesting. I only know about the his break from whatever you want to call it, from you talking about it actually. Yeah, it's interesting the way he's decided to structure his career.
Mm.
And yeah, it does seem like this role was perhaps tweaked for him ever so slightly. His, spiritual to a point, because he's still a horn dog. You know, yeah, I wonder what the alternate universe is. What would this character be if it wasn't him? And what would the jackal be if it was him? That would be a very different film.
Very different. Yeah, I can't really imagine that at all.
No.
He's more suited to this, for sure, than he is to Jackal.
100%.
Certainly at this point in his career.
Yeah.
And that is a deeply average movie.
Yes.
And this, we've pointed out some faults here, but this is not an average movie. This is a strong movie. This is a good movie. Just it's not a perfect movie.
Yeah. Like, if you took everything I said, you'd probably think that I didn't like it that much, but I love this movie, despite everything I've said. But I think because it tries to do so much, and it tries to cover so much, then it does open itself up to more criticisms, because it just covers so much more ground.
Yeah,
it could just do that 3-point plot, and it wouldn't have much to say about itself, and we wouldn't have much to say about it either.
Yeah.
But yeah, philanthropic. Interesting.
Do you mind if I share a couple of letterbox reviews and see what some other people think?
Definitely.
Okay. Ghost Dinosaur says, McConaughey made a bold choice to make all of his dialogue to Jodie sexual innuendos, even when it wasn't at all appropriate to the scene. Which I think aligns with the horn dog comment that we keep coming back to as well.
Yeah, pretty much.
Matt the Snapper says, Zemeckis introduced Matthew McConaughey to space so Nolan could bring him there. I can't wait to get to Interstellar. That is a special movie.
Yeah, I'm going to have to rewatch that one for that episode.
I mean, I'm really, that point of this podcast is going to be, that's True Detective, that's Dallas Buyers Club, that's Oscar win, Interstellar. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm on a absolute roll at that point of doing this.
You're going to be loving it.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be good times. Okay, Joe Raid says, sure, they didn't have any real romantic chemistry, but I could watch Jodie Foster try to explain Occam's razor to a barely comprehending Matthew McConaughey all day. Which feels a little harsh, but...
harsh, but also fair.
Yeah. All right, I've been building up to this one. If you just give me a second, I think we need to hear a little bit about Martin, because he has some strong views.
Oh, we love strong views.
He says, I didn't understand the term mansplaining until I saw this movie. Seriously, even the hot priest gets to have the last word over the smart and convincing female scientist. Jodie Foster is essentially stymied at every turn by know nothing or sociopathic men. There are a lot of great reviews that basically say the things I want to say, but I will say that forcing a "we need faith for everything, and by the way, religion and science can coexist" message onto the screenplay totally misreads everything that Sagan stood for. Matthew McConaughey is possibly my least favourite actor of all time. He ruins this movie so completely that it ends up being quite a sad reflection of what could have been. I would certainly have cut his entire storyline and saved the viewer about 30 minutes of painful expositionary acting. I will say he made me feel a brand new thing, that Owen Wilson, by comparison, is positively Shakespearean. He goes on a bit. I'm going to pause there because that is quite enough from Martin, because he, but I think, he's talking about the novel, and you as somebody who's read that, do you feel that that's fair? Does it misread Sagan's point and what he did with the novel?
No, I don't think so. I'm a bit confused by that, because that was kind of the point of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like yeah, the novel does go into greater detail, and it does have a bit more of a satisfying ending, which
Mhm.
I don't know if you want me to spoil or not. But the
Okay.
okay, I won't.
Thanks.
The overarching theme is the same,
Yeah.
you know.
So,
So
so
I'm
maybe
not quite sure.
Martin's misread the novel,
Yeah,
and he's definitely misread Matthew McConaughey.
yeah, yeah. I'm a bit confused by that one because Sagan was quite good at, looking at how we look at science and not just accepting it on the surface.
Mm.
You do have to have some sort of deeper belief, as it were. And obviously, I'm condensing a great man's work into 5 stupid words, but he wasn't just saying maths yay.
Yeah. And as you said before, was heavily involved in this process all the way through, really, up until really it was made, or up until like, and I can't remember what he was diagnosed with, but he was diagnosed with like a debilitating disease, wasn't he? So like right up until that point, I know you were right. There were additional people that were involved in making changes to the script, but he was still involved. So he clearly seemed to be fairly happy with what direction it was taking.
Yeah, through the whole production up until basically the point that he couldn't work anymore. He was there sort of giving guidance and giving his input and talking to the crew and making sure like all the actors and everyone were kind of in on the theories and everything. Like apparently he sort of sat them down and gave them a couple of lectures just to sort of make sure that they would understand the history of spaceflight and some of the theories behind it. He didn't just let it write it and hand it off and say, off you pop.
I love that. I hope he got like a big whiteboard out behind him and got the pens out. And I always love those scenes in movies. I know that is pure exposition, but I love it. When Doc Brown's Back to the Future's writing on the board, or in Interstellar, fold a bit of paper and put a pencil through it. I love all those scenes. I hope he was doing that.
Yeah, my favourite is the TV show Numbers, where they're just basically writing on glass or wherever there appears to be glass, because that's a bit more dramatic.
Yeah, true. Yeah. It worked for Will Hunting, didn't it? So why not?
Yeah, that's true. How'd you like them apples?
Oh, that is beautiful. I mean, honestly, we didn't script that, everybody. That was pure improv.
You couldn't script that.
It's true. So in terms of McConaughey, in terms of this point in his career, obviously he's just had a time to kill. He's blown up. And somehow he ended up being in Larger Than Life, which must have been filmed before with Bill Murray and an elephant. Where's this in terms of his performance, do you think? And his point in this career? Is it classic, worth catching, or completist only?
Oh, that's a difficult question. If you're looking at it to sort of see what he can do, then you'd probably put it in a classic, because he did a lot with not a lot. If you're doing it as a, I want to watch things that he's done and I want to see all the screen time, then it would be more worth catching, because you're not going to see loads of him. But if you want to sort of really film studies, look at what the guy's capable of, then I'll probably put it in a classic.
All right, good. You're the guest. It is all your choice. Fantastic. All right.
Yeah. But what would you say?
No, I think you've put it perfectly. I think I don't think it's pushing his career in any new directions.
No.
But I think he holds his own on screen with Jodie Foster. So, that's impressive by itself.
Yeah.
And I think the film itself is certainly at this point of his career, way up there, like one of the best films that he's done. But I think it will maintain that position for a long time to come. I think, it's going to be, it's his top 5, it's his top 10 of kind of films that he's in. I think, I agree with you. We've nitpicked at a few things, but this is a 4.5. This is a 8 or 9 out of 10. This is it's a strong movie, and I think what he does, he does bring something to it. He just was unfortunately sort of hampered by kind of perhaps the character, which ostensibly became the love interest. I think you're right, and I think what that does for my balance of my rating so far is really interesting. It adds a new classic. Obviously, he's got 3 classics now, and a couple of worth catching. So he's really sort of still seesawing between that kind of really good, really shit. There is no middle ground still at the moment, which I think is really fascinating for him, because obviously with the Staith, we had a couple of classics to begin with, and then we just kind of hit middle ground for a really, really, really long time. Yeah. With a couple of duffers and a couple that are slightly better, but just kind of pretty much even keel for him. Whereas McConaughey just seems to be a little bit more yo-yo. Yeah,
which I don't know his filmography inside out, but just off the top of my head, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see how the rankings change, because he really goes all over the place, even in his highest highs.
Yeah,
there's going to be some oddities along the way.
Do you think you've seen many of his?
Well, I was looking through the list, and not as many as I thought.
Yeah.
Like Statham, I probably had seen, picking a random number off the top of my head, probably about 78% of them. Whereas this, it's probably more like 40. It's definitely less than half.
Yeah. I'm in a similar position. Somebody that I picked to watch, I would say, 50 tops for me.
Yeah. There are some very interesting looking ones in there. Good luck.
Yeah, thanks. A few that we've already got out of the way, though, thankfully. So
yeah.
All right. Thank you, mate. That's brilliant. I'm just trying to think, have we got you lined up for anything else? Like, I can't remember. I'm going to quickly consult my list.
I don't think so.
Oh, we're going to have to find you something then that you are interested in talking about, where you can bring your expertise to again. But we'll do that. We'll do that admin.
Yeah. Now that I've talked about how the lowest of lows.
Yeah. You feel like I should give you one of those? Is that right? Yeah. You've had.
Well, I feel like I've just put that upon myself.
Yeah. Fair enough. All right, superb. Thank you, mate.
Thank you very much. Very much enjoyed watching this again. Very much enjoyed talking about it. And yes, despite what it may have sounded like, I do like this film, I promise.
All right, Filmography followers. All that's left for me to say is thank you once again for listening and partaking in this journey with me through the reconnaissance. Of course, that was Contact. Next up in a fortnight, I'm hoping to be joined by Angry Andy to discuss Eminem's performance as Roger Sherman Baldwin and Steven Spielberg's historical epic Amistad, for those that are watching along. Until next time, be excellent to each other and make sure you take the time to treat yourself too. I am Jack signing off. Yippee-ki-yay, movie lovers. Cut.